Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Red Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Coltin Schachtner, and today I have Trent with me. So Trent, he's the head of Red Risk here at Red Star. So Trent, just introduce yourself, what you've done in the past, and what you do at Red Star.
Yeah, I'm Trent Janssen, work with Red Risk Strategies, which is a leg of Red Star. We do the risk management through crop insurance and livestock insurance, and our idea is to capture the markets and leave our upside open. And we do the multi-peril, the crop hail, all the supplemental products. But again, our main focus is, setting that floor and leaving the upside potential open for producers.
Perfect. So can you go into crop insurance? What's it going to look like this year? Obviously, the vast majority of our customers are crop producers, and insurance is a pretty big part into making sure we can still farm another year.
Yep. It's March 11th. Things are winding down. A lot of people have taken advantage of ECO, which is the enhanced coverage option on a county-based level. They've also taken advantage where we landed on corn at $4.70 and $10.54 on the soybeans, just to capture that revenue, because the revenue is just as important as the bushels.
Definitely. Can you just explain a little bit more of what an ECO is for those who might not understand what that is be over and above our 80% coverage through federal government?
Yeah, what that is, it's a county-based product, and it actually covers a band of 86 to 95% or 86 to 90, depending upon which level you decide to take. That helps close that deductible, so to speak. So if you're at the 80% level, you have a 20% exposure, and that helps keep that top-end potential open, especially in tight margin years when you're trying to hold that revenue. It is a county-based product, so obviously the people that are taking it won't get paid out till 1st of June of 2026 approximately, after RMA collects all that data, yield data, and compiles it and gives it back to the insurance companies. But it is a way to take advantage of a product with no margin calls.
Okay. And is that based solely on crop revenue? Is it based on yield? Or
It is based upon the crop revenue and yield of the county, of their local county. And depending upon where you're at, if you're in Iowa, or Nebraska, it is broken out by practice. So if you have irrigation and or dry land, depending upon county, it can or would be broken out by practice.
Okay. Well, in Iowa, we don't have much dry land, or we don't have much irrigated because, it actually rains in Iowa.
Yes.
So other than that.
But there is irrigation in Iowa.
There is some, yes, especially once you get to southern, and there's spots up in extreme northern Iowa where there is some, especially in the organic range.
Yeah.
So other than those products, what is another thing that you deal a lot with?
Supplemental revenue products, where they can kind of control when they set their prices. Some of them are out in advance of the normal time periods because we try to hit seasonal highs. Like one producer said earlier this year, thou shalt not have unpriced corn or grain after July 1st. And so we try to help that during those seasonal highs to help the producers opening up their chances of success.
Okay. And when you're pricing out that grain, are you pricing out like contracts, or are you just setting a price? And do you do like, okay, we're insured for this much and we know we can produce about that, and then you contract that many and just leave the last 15% open, or how's that work?
At Red Risk here, our idea is to, say, attack that from the top down.
Okay.
A lot of people say from the bottom up because they know what their insured bushels are. But when we set these contracts in place, the idea behind this all is to maybe take a look at marketing some grain at that point. It's important to know the break evens, and that's how we tie into Red Star too. When we help supply the inputs, we have a good idea where these producers are at, and then we get a plan put in place. But your stool of success is really, three legs. One is you have to produce it, and that's where Red Star comes in, because when prices do get depressed, I've heard for my lifetime that you got to bushel through it, and then you got your risk management tied to it as your other leg, but then you also got to sell it. So so it's a three-legged approach, and you need producers like to be challenged in proactive ways, and if they take advantage of it, it's up to them because it's still their grain when they want to market it, but it gives you an idea of maybe having, say, 28 months to market it versus, say, 17 months to market it by the time you grow it and sell it as some new and some old crop.
Okay. Yeah, I would say producers they're very good at creating the grain, It's just getting rid of it at the right price is very difficult.
Yeah, and the way I'd sum that up is, when you take a look at it, a producer really spends about 24 months with a crop. By the time they plan to raise it, they actually raise it, and then they're selling that old crop. So that's a lot of time and effort, rightfully so, put towards that. But the one thing we can't do is lose focus, throughout the year. We should be able to, say, market it over that same time period. Because even if you attack it from the top down, a 10% sale here, if you have an idea where your inputs could be or about are from year to year, and that's where Red Star again comes into play. Like working with your customers, Coltin, you got a good idea from year to year where they're going to be at. We can open up their door for success or window for success, give them more chances to be successful.
Okay. And with that pricing option, say in order to get the insurance money, I need to hit 180 bushels, which we never want to collect insurance. But say it's 180 bushel and say I raise 200. Do I still get to capture that price I locked in, or is it only if we don't achieve
It
that
just,
number?
well, it depends upon where the markets go.
Okay.
And that's where you establish your price sooner instead of waiting to traditionally the two lower periods, the time frame in February and October. It gets tied back to your revenue, and this is where it acts like a hedge to your grain bed. On your own bushels and not necessarily a county-based product. And that's where the difference comes in.
Okay. Perfect. So what else do you see that really separates Red Risk from every other crop insurance out there?
There's a lot of similarities out there, and there's some difference out there, and it's the way we attack the market from the top down, and safeguarding our producers and the best way I like to describe it is, take a pitcher in baseball. You're up to bat. Would you rather have 2 pitches to hit, or would you rather have 6?
Well, 6.
Right, and that's where we come in, because we open that up to give those opportunities to be successful throughout the year, to give those 6 different options versus just 2 when it comes time to tying your revenue to your bushels.
Okay. Perfect. I guess, so I'm not very familiar with this, but what are other key things you're talking to growers with right now? Obviously, we're coming to the end of it, but what's some key discussions you've had? And
where we're at in the soil profile, because you got to tie the agronomy to the crop insurance as well, and you can't be afraid to talk about it. Last year we finished the crop out, and we had decent crops last year, but we didn't have much rain from, say, the middle of August on. I don't know about your area, but I know our area was definitely that way, and we haven't had much moisture this winter. And then you take a look at the snowpack too, and where we're at in the snowpack and where the ocean waters are at temperature-wise to help create our storms, throughout the whole year. And so when you take a look at that and look where the markets are, and then take a look at what's going on in the world, because the United States, we're the second largest bean producer in the world. We have to tip our hat to South America. They affect the market just as much as anybody else, obviously. And so when you take a look at the world economics and what we have going on, and then two, what we have going on in the political world, we're all very well aware of it, and we've seen how the tariffs, just recently affected some fertilizer prices, that come through. And so how are you managing that risk to take all that off your mind so you can sleep at night and just go do what the producer loves to do, and you aforementioned it before, and that's going out and raise that crop. That's where they really enjoy it, and if we can help take some of that worry out, sooner than later, and have, say multiple years with risk management underneath it, then that should help a producer be successful.
Perfect. So are you doing, I shouldn't say crop consulting, but grain marketing on top of the insurance as well?
We talk about their grain marketing plan, but I will work with their grain marketers and sit down with them. Actually, even we'll sit down with their lenders too, so we all understand what we have. We made mention of that stool of success. You do those 3 things well, there ain't a lender out there in the world that's not going to do business with you. But it's also too, just like any relationship, and once you're in that trusted advisor circle, you got to have the communication between everybody. And that's something that the customers I've worked with so far are really happy that I'm willing to have those conversations. So we're all on the same page. Just, one individual earlier this year, they've already got, say, 25% of their crop sold, for this next year at a really good price. And so we made some adjustments on their risk management that, hey, do we need this or that? Maybe not. And really can kind of say, customize that risk management plan that's tied to their marketing plan, and it makes a big difference in their success.
Okay, awesome. So when we're looking at the price, obviously in very lean times like we are right now, price starts to add up. And I know it's different for everybody when it comes to this. But if you had to give an average of how many bushels of, let's call it either corn or soybeans, that this product would cost you, that you would be able to overachieve on.
Well, I'll ask the question a different way.
Yeah.
And it is really this is how do you protect that balance sheet, Colton? At the end of the day, and we number one, we need to know their cost per acre and break even per bushels, just like everybody else does. But then how do we take that risk to protect that balance sheet? And that grain marketing goes with it. So depending upon where people's balance sheets are at, you really do go from one end of the spectrum to the other for what they're spending. But everything that they do, it works for them, at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, too, risk management is the only thing that's going to guarantee anybody revenue at the end of the day. You can have the best seed corn, best fertilizer program, or even the best equipment out there. But if Mother Nature decides to come through and not only affect your backyard, but affect the world, because, the last, say, 60 days, we've been really watching the South America weather.
Yeah.
How do we tie that all together to your risk management plan? And again, at the end of the day, we're more concerned about protecting your balance sheet and making sure you're trending the right way to make sure you have the working capital in position. So even in a lean year, you can still go and expand if you want to expand for that next generation coming home.
Perfect. So is this something that, say, you're talking to your banker and you take it to them, that they might help you out a little bit more to say, okay, or I should say, do bankers like to see this, where it's like we got all this protected on the top end, then take that to them?
Yeah, the best way I can describe that is working through your working capital. You sit down with a banker or lender, I should say, and you see where that person's at. And of course, when you do that, you're sitting there with the customer as well, and you have a game plan. Because just think if you would have had $12 beans coming into this year by taking that risk off the table early on for the 2025 season, where some people have done that, and those lenders, they really appreciate seeing that they have this contract in place, and they didn't wait to set their price. They took advantage of the markets when the markets were there and set that price.
And just to put it all in perspective, with the guys you work, or would you say $1,000 to $1,200 is pretty common to put in a corn crop?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty common. There are some 850s in the world. It just depends upon cost structure and land owned, and versus land rented. But if they have any P&I or depending upon their rent is, the dirt, yeah, 1,050 to say 1,150 is pretty common.
Okay. And my point with that is you're spending 12 $100 bills to put that crop in. And you need to be able to protect that. And then that's where a specialist like you comes in.
Right. And you made mention this earlier, Colton, is if you don't collect from this, you still win. If you have the proper risk management in place. If you don't have the proper management in place and you don't get paid from this and you're short of the crop and you left yourself a big deductible, that's when the balance sheet gets exposed. And that's what we're trying to protect. Perfect.
Anything else Red Risk does that we should be aware of?
For what we do here, and I got a partner, Betsy Krieger. She helps process the paperwork, and of course we're in tune with each other, and we're both watching markets, and we're watching different things to go out there and communicate with our customers on the why we're here today. And I don't care if it's the cattle market or if it is the grain market, corn or soybeans or even wheat that we deal with in the wheat sector, is we're always taking a look at taking the risk off the table and leaving that upside open. And so one of the things we feel like we do well is we communicate, quite frankly. And we send a lot of text messages out. And I always ask the customers, hey, are you still okay with these text messages or emails that we send out? And everyone says, you bet, just keep it coming. And that's how we try to stay in tune. Because, like we said earlier, individuals really love to go produce the bushels. And that is our reminder to stay in front of our customers. And it's more than just where the current markets are. It's maybe what's affecting the markets at that time for what we're seeing, at that time. And so far, everyone's always said, nope, keep them coming.
Perfect. And so with the livestock, obviously a lot less of our growers and customers have livestock, but can you talk about some of the different options that we have for livestock insurance?
Yeah, we have LRP, which is livestock risk protection, and then LGM, loss gross margin. And that allows us to insure different ways. LRP has really been a hot topic, especially around feeder cattle right now and even in the feed yards, just because where the markets are. And when you're at all-time highs, it's how do we manage that risk? And yeah, am I going to spend X amount of dollars per head? Yep, but I'm at least going to guarantee this revenue coming back in. And that's where guys are taking a look at it and trying to take that risk off the board. And this past year, a lot of unborn for LRP on feeder calves were very popular, and it still is because some guys haven't started calving. But we're starting to ensure that hoof on the ground too with calving going on, obviously with the spring calves, and so it is a good way to set that floor and leave your upside wide open.
Okay, perfect. Any other rangeland or any insurance for pasture, things like that?
Yeah, we have the PRF product, which is out there, but that needs to be done by DEAS-1.
Okay.
For the following year.
Okay.
And we had, sales obviously earlier this year around December 1, but also too, a lot of guys we've sold LRP on, they're sitting there saying, yep, you know what, I need to know more about that PRF next year. Because some of these relationships, we didn't get into until the end of December right away, because by the time we got up and selling, it was there. Because in my previous life, I didn't maybe mention, but I've been doing insurance risk management over 16 years, and I got over 30 years of industry experience as a whole. But by the time we just got up and running, we were kind of past that DEAS-1 time frame, even though we did get a little bit in there. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and on that PRF, there are some very good tools out there that we have. That shows your probability of getting paid during which intervals. And so, yeah, we're getting all those conversations set up too for December 1 of this year.
Perfect. And with that pasture, is it just to ensure that it grows, or is it if it doesn't produce what we think it should, it's paying for hay for the cattle?
Yep.
Or
it's all off a rainfall index.
Okay.
And there's different monitors out there, and they track it. And then I'll be honest, we just got done with the Jan-Feb interval, and we have customers with claims out there on there because we did not get the precip fall. So it's all done through technology, and it's a good program to be a part of.
Now, is it a super score where, say, we get another 40 inches in the spring time frame, that it takes away from the later time frame, or does it specifically go off of those intervals?
It's specifically off the intervals you choose.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you as the producer can choose those intervals.
Yeah, so you choose those intervals by DEAS-1.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's something that obviously from Iowa I don't have a lot of experience with.
But there is quite a bit of PRF in Iowa, believe it or not.
Yeah, especially in the southern part of the state.
Possibilities, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Sweet. Anything else you want anybody to take away today?
No, we've talked about it, but what I'd reiterate is, how are you taking the risk off your market? Out of the market, I should say, and how often do you give yourself that opportunity, and how's the communication, and how is that communication between where you're doing business today and where it is here today with our customers? Like I said, our customers appreciate the interaction on a regular basis, and we try to keep doing that, and they understand that we are trying to take the risk out of the market, not only on the current crop year, but future crop years at the same time.
Perfect. So when this podcast comes out, we're going to be past the insurance time frame.
Yep.
If they want to get in on this, what is the next time frame that they can get a hold of you to start doing some planning?
I'd say anytime after March 15th. I mean, in this industry, if you're not taking a look at, there's always an opportunity to take risk off the market, and some of that risk just might be having that conversation and understanding the why we're going to do this. Why we're looking at that. Obviously, some of these products become available later in the year, but if you haven't heard about it yet, I think it's a good time to even talk on March 16th, or May 1st or whatever. But we do recognize the weather's changing. Yesterday was 80 degrees approximately, and it's not going to be too much longer. And there's already been some dirt turned in our area, but there's going to be a whole lot more in the next 4 weeks. Yeah. Nope. Neighbor across the road on February 28th on chiseled ground. They dished about a quarter of ground up.
Wow.
And it looked like a garden. Looked like he's ready to go.
Nice. Yeah, it'll be here before we know it.
Yes.
Sweet. Well, thanks for your time today, Trent. Again, this is a Red Effect podcast brought to you by Red Star. Red Star, where our red makes you green.